to Way Back When with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy.
Glynn Burrows, the owner of Norfolk Tours in England, is back on Big Blend Radio's Way Back When history show today to talk about Captain George Vancouver's historic ties between Kings Lynn in Norfolk, England, and the west coast of North America. Actually, this was all started from, we were running one of the articles by Hillary Larson, a travel writer. She went to Whidbey, which is in one of the islands in Washington State, just outside Seattle. A beautiful area, and it was named after Joseph Whidbey. And Nancy, you discovered also that he was connected to George Vancouver when you were, and so we decided, well, you decided to do a little investigating, and next thing you know, we had to call Glynn because yet another connection back to England and back to Norfolk has happened. So Glynn is one of our Big Blend expert contributors. You can read his articles and listen to his past interviews, always fun. Go to blendradioandtv.com. But most importantly, go visit his website and connect with Glynn. Go to norfolk-tours.co.uk, especially if you're planning a visit to England, anywhere in England, and also if you're looking to research your family history. And this is your thing, Glynn. This is reaching, getting into people's family history and, researching those connections. So welcome back.
Hello, yes, I love delving into the past and to find out some really obscure little pieces of information. It makes history come alive.
I know today you were scheduled to talk about ruins, and then all of a sudden, wait, we've got to talk about George Vancouver. And I remember when you came back from Australia, your family visit, getting into
Canada.
Canada. Canada. You went out there, and that when you went over there, you found George Vancouver there. You found a statue of him.
I did indeed. Yeah, we went actually to Vancouver, and we went to Vancouver Island, and I was really pleased to pay my respects to George because him and I were born in the same town. How about that?
Kings Lynn. So this is interesting because the statues, you have one in Kings Lynn and then one on Vancouver Island, and so his statue faces, if in Vancouver is facing towards Kings Lynn and the one in Kings Lynn is facing towards Vancouver. Have I got that straight?
You have. Yeah, the one in Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, is actually in front of, I believe it's in front of the City Hall, and he's pointing out towards Kings Lynn, so they say, and I can't disagree with that. And the one in Kings Lynn, they say he's also pointing out towards Vancouver in Canada. So who's to argue with the people who tell me? That's a long way. I know that's a very long way between Vancouver and Kings Lynn.
Yeah, I know about those long flights too. And going over to Vancouver. So are your relatives in Vancouver? I mean, because that's pretty interesting too, that extra connection.
No, my relatives are actually in Toronto. But when Diane and I went over a couple of years ago, they decided that it would be a really good excuse for them to have a holiday to the West Coast because some of them hadn't been. So they ended up to be 13 of us, actually, all family, traipsed across the country. Then we landed in Calgary, took transport, we had hired our own vehicles, went all the way across the Rockies, and then to Vancouver itself, and then Vancouver Island.
Wow.
So that was quite a family expedition. And they must be gluttons for punishment because this year, Diane and I are going over again in August. We're flying into Toronto, and then we're going to drive across to the East Coast because another one of my ancestors actually fought in Halifax in Nova Scotia. Wow. And I want to go to Halifax to pay my respects to him. And they said, well, some of us haven't been to Prince Edward Island, so that's where we're going. So another holiday with 12 people this time, all relations, all going across to the East Coast.
Wow, I love this, Glynn. And there's no better way than to know your family by going on a road trip together.
Isn't that fantastic?
You get right in there, and you start to know everybody's little things, their little quirks, and there's no better way than to get to know someone by that. And so we're going to have a Halifax report and a Prince Edward Island. That's somewhere I know that you're going to see whales, and I know last time you saw bears, so this time you may be seeing whales, from what I've heard.
Fantastic! I look forward to it.
This is exciting. So now going back to Captain George Vancouver, this is so Whidbey Island. There's a lot of historic sites, and also part of our National Park Services out there too. So now I'm already going. There's other names in the back of my head that we're going to have to connect on this later. But so he was born in Kings Lynn, but this was back in 1757. So it's pretty amazing, because it gave us some photos that everybody, Glynn's article's up on nationalparktraveling.com, so you can see the images there and read his article on this. And it's also going to be featured in the June-July issue of Parks and Travel magazine. But in there, you gave us photos of St. Margaret's Church, and I mean, this is an elaborate church.
Oh, it's an amazing building. It used to be a priory, because lots of big towns had priories and friaries and abbeys and monasteries, and St. Margaret's Church was also a priory. And after the dissolution, Henry VIII leaving the Catholic Church and forming a church himself, he demolished lots of the priories, but obviously Kings Lynn still needed a big church, so he left St. Margaret's Church to be the church in the town. And it is a magnificent building. It's got two towers. On one side, in the present day, it's got a clock, and on the other tower, it's got a tidal clock. So because it's right on the sea, so if you want to see what the tides are doing, the church tower has actually got a tidal clock on it, so you can see when the tides are coming in.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a fantastic thing.
I've got an offbeat question. Go figure, because of course I'm going to feature us, right? Over here, a lot of the church bells, they have them. They're recordings now, and one of there was this one historic church that we were in this desert town called Wickenburg, out here in the Southwest in Arizona. It's a small historic town. A lot of cattle ranching and mining, and just a real southwest town. And we were sitting there downtown waiting for someone, and the church bells went off, and it's a recording, but they were doing Anchors Aweigh, which we're like, what? You know what I mean? So my question to you, because I know that Norfolk, you talked about how many churches, isn't it 600 churches in Norfolk? Am I getting the numbers right?
There's over 650 medieval churches in Norfolk.
Wow. Do they ring the bells, or are they recordings now? Do they go up there?
No, they still ring the bells. They ring the bells in the church in my village, in Gresson Hall. In fact, Gresson Hall has got, I think we've got 8 bells still. So you've got a really good peal of bells. The bells rang when Verity got married. You get the church bells ringing. It sounds beautiful from the village. Church bells are very loud and a bit, I don't know, loud. We'll call them loud. Church bells are very loud when you're close up, but from a distance over the fields, church bells sound absolutely beautiful. They really do.
So someone goes up there and does that, and it's heavy work to get up there and then to do that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, also going back to the Church of St. Margaret, you talked about so the priory itself was a Benedictine priory. And you said it was founded in 1101, which, I mean, this is talk about like some history here. And you said by the first Bishop of Norwich, Herbert de Losinga. Now, that doesn't sound like an English name to me.
No, most of the families in Norfolk, obviously, the big families came over from Normandy, because don't forget, in 1101, we're still just after the Battle of Hastings, which took place in obviously 1066. So, a lot of the big important families were from Normandy. So obviously Herbert de Losinga come from Losinga, which is either in France, or it might have even been Italy by the looks of his name. But we had a lot of foreign people, obviously, because when the Normans came over and conquered us, the first thing the new king did was to divvy up the land and give it to his friends. So most of the big landowners in England after 1066 were Normans, or they were friends of the king, obviously, because there was all this free land for him to give up.
Wow. Well, where was I?
Yeah, really.
Like, you can give me some land. That sounds
Yeah,
good
me
to me.
too.
I know it's just interesting because I was looking at the name and I thought, oh, what if he's like, a relative, like he's part of the Romans, that were there, because you always talk about the Roman roads and the Roman.
Oh yeah.
English,
Yeah, we're 1,000 years later here.
Okay, Glynn, I didn't do very well in math. Okay.
No, never mind.
Can you tell? But okay, so now going back again to George Vancouver, you said it was the son of John Gasper, and then you put Jasper Vancouver. So
yes,
the J versus the G, and his wife.
Yeah, I mean the actual parish register, as you see, because I put a copy of the parish register in the article. It does actually say Gasper, but they think it was probably Jasper, because it would all depend how you would write it down. There weren't any real rules of spelling in this time, so it could have just been how the vicar thought you spelt Jasper, because it weren't a usual name in that day. So he just wrote down what he heard, and he wrote the Jasper with a G instead of a J, probably. But anyway, his name was John Vancouver, and he was actually a customs officer. He worked in the customs house, and funnily enough, that's where the statue of George is, in front of the customs house where his dad used to work, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, this is just the connections to me are so amazing. And definitely there's some scandal involved here somewhere.
Yeah,
we just don't know quite what it is yet, but we'll get there. So now George joined the Royal Navy in 1771, and then off he goes. And next thing you know, he's hanging out with Captain Cook.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, how's that for name dropping? Eh? To get in voyages with one of the most well-known discovery men in history, and he was discovering, and this is only just after Australia was discovered. He was actually on the Discovery, which went, to actually map part of the southwest coast of Australia. I mean, Australia was only just discovered, and this is where our man was there. It's just amazing that one, I'm going to call him a little man. He weren't actually very tall, but a normal human being from Kings Lynn was actually one of the first people to map Australia. And then he became, one of the first people to set foot in British Columbia that is today. Yeah, he was a really, really important bloke, and so forward thinking, and so brave. I mean, can you imagine? You go from Kings Lynn to somewhere that nobody has ever been before. You've got no idea what you're going to find. You've no idea who you're going to find. Can you imagine? That must have been absolutely petrifying.
Well, you could easily have run out of food. Like,
you're
out in the middle of the ocean, and it's not like you can just make a left turn and go to Walmart.
No,
you don't want to go there.
And also the thing is, they didn't actually know necessarily how far it was to the next place they could do any trade with the natives, because they used to take things with them to trade with the natives. And often things like copper pots and pans would be really, really sought after by the tribes that they met, or things like knives, or anything that was completely different. Obviously, they could then trade these things for food. But when you're going across the Pacific Ocean, you've got to be pretty clever to know where Hawaii is, even if you've been there before. To set course from New Zealand to Hawaii and actually hit it, you've got to be pretty clever, haven't you?
Well, they're going by the stars, right? That's what Nancy and I were talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like
That's the only thing they could
you
go
don't
by.
have a road map. It's like
No.
you're not driving. But I mean, this even trying to sail, to me, that's got to be crazy. I don't care how many maps you have. It's like turn left at the wave to the right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they did just use the stars. And when you consider that they used the stars for their mapping, and actually Vancouver's maps of the west coast of America are about as accurate as you can get. They were, I think they were a little bit out on one, either the latitude or the longitude. One of those measurements weren't quite right. But when you consider that they were just using the stars, and they are some of the best charts of the west coast of America, even today, that's pretty amazing.
It's interesting, too, because, I know that he was out in, what is now Washington State and Whidbey Island. And when we were learning about Eby's Reserve and Eby's Landing, and I wonder about that name, it's Ebey, and I may be saying it wrong, Eby, can never say anything right. But there was all this, they have America's camp, they had British camp, where they got along peacefully until a pig went running through. Or you remember that story, Nancy?
Yeah.
And then somebody stole the pig, and then all, ruckus happened. Everybody went crazy, and it was the British, the Americans, and then there was Russian camps, there were the Spanish, the French, there was all of this going on, and yet the Oregon Treaty was all connected. I mean, this is what was going on in British Columbia and the Pacific Northwest historically was incredible. And he gets there during that. And it was interesting because he also, you said in the article that he left England on All Fool's Day. That's great. That's a good time to start. But he arrived in the vicinity of Cape Cabrillo, north of San Francisco Bay. And when I look at that Cabrillo, we have a national monument in San Diego, so that's the tip of California, if you want to say that. But Cabrillo, he was really fascinating. His history of coming up, and then he got sick. He did a lot of. He was a newspaper writer. He did all these things, and this boy, here he goes on this crazy voyage, and his whole thing was to actually get up to that Bay Area that you referenced. And I don't think he made it. I think that's where he died was up there. I have to research that again, but it's just, again, everything is connected. It just, this kind of stuff reminds me of, you've got to know that somehow you're connected to your neighbor, no matter where they are.
Well, exactly. I mean, it is totally amazing that you think that this one man did so much and saw so much. Like I say, not only did he start to actually survey Australia and Canada, but he had a lot of connection with Hawaii, and he was actually present when Captain Cook was killed. That sort of thing is of huge international importance, and he was there. So I mean, these little things that you just think, all right, there's a statue of Captain George Vancouver, but actually when you think what he did, even to do that today would be classed as a bit of an adventure, wouldn't it? But to do it in 1790, I just can't get my head around I was going to say the mentality, but that's not what I mean. But the bravery, the foolhardiness perhaps, or, just to actually do that. And they were basically just doing it to chart the land. They weren't doing it to conquer. They were doing it because they wanted to draw maps. That's amazing.
Well, I think that's what's so cool about maps. And I wanted to talk about the Discovery because that was, so Captain Cook had a ship called the Discovery, and then this is a different Discovery that he was the captain of, right?
Yeah, later on, yes, he had another ship that was also called the Discovery. But Captain Cook's Discovery was the one in the 1770s. But then Vancouver had another ship, and they called that the Discovery as well. So I should imagine the first one had probably sunk or had been broken up or something. I don't know. I haven't researched that bit.
Okay, so now then, in there you were talking about, he's got you were giving the description of the ship, and you talked about 4-pounders. So these are small like small cannons, not these huge ones that go, but they're smaller ones that can.
Well, they're on the ship.
Yeah, you need them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously needed to have cannon to protect themselves because they didn't know what they were going to come across. But obviously they didn't want to have great big cannon because these little ships, and they weren't very big, they were only 99 foot long. So they weren't massive boats. They were just little ships. And also, as has already been said, you had to carry everything with you. So they didn't want to take up a lot of the time, the space and the weight with tons of great big cannon. So they just took what they needed to protect themselves. And these little cannon, I mean, they only fired 4-pound shot, which is quite small, but obviously it's still going to do you a lot of damage if it hits you. But the thing that I was most interested in, because I hadn't heard about these little guns before, they were called swivels, and they were like a big rifle, really, that were actually cannon because rifles hadn't been invented. But they were very small cannon, and they just fired inch shot, which was obviously enough to kill people, but it weren't a massive thing. And then also when you consider that they had to be loaded individually as well, so you couldn't go bang 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 bang. You went bang, hang on, I'm going to have to load it again, and then 5 minutes later bang again. So it was it must have been horrendous, if there was any problems. Hand-to-hand combat.
Automatic weapons that we have today, and I think that that gives you that time to think of what you're doing, So he was out that area 3 years mapping the whole area, and you were talking about all these little islands, and here you are with this ship. I mean, I wonder how did they just anchor the ship and then start hiking around or going on horseback? They didn't have ferries back there back then. I don't.
No, but they would have had small boats, like little lifeboats. They would have lowered them, and that's how they would have went out to shore to do shore excursions, and then they would have walked. I wouldn't have thought they would have bothered taking any horses, because a horse is a complete waste of space on a boat. A cow or a goat is very useful because it gives milk, but then again, you still got to feed it. So I don't think they would have taken many animals, but a horse is almost the most stupid thing you can take on a boat, really, because it's going to be no good to you because it hasn't got another use,
Well,
but they would have had shore excursions on a little rowboat and done their surveying either from the boat and then on the land.
Wow. Can you imagine having horses, in the hull of a ship, and you're not really connecting with land for a long time, and the horses are just standing.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. It's
no,
especially
they
that they like
bother.
to move around. Yeah. So this whole thing, because then he went back home, but this whole thing was 4.5 years, 65,000 miles that they sailed with over 10,000 miles of shore and surveying excursions. I can't even fathom that.
No, I mean, if you have a look at the northwest coast up near Vancouver Island, and you actually have a look at the coast, it is so complicated to map because it's all little tiny inlets and little tiny islands. So you can see how they mapped so many miles because a lot of it was little tiny islands. And it must have been so depressing. You go around a corner, oh no, there's another island. Can you imagine?
It's so fascinating to me how all of this happened, because after he did this, then in 1804, the Lewis and Clark expedition started from the inland, from Missouri, going all the way across, and they went all the way to the West Coast and got up to Washington State and Oregon and camped there. And they did theirs for 2 years, and they were journaling. And when they got back, they had the journaling, just this huge task to give this to Thomas Jefferson. and it's these expeditions to me that I would have jumped at the chance easily to do this. To me, I think there's just something. I just think it's in my DNA that I think that in a past life I did the Lewis and Clark Trail or the Juan Bautista expedition. I don't know, but I don't know. These expeditions to me, just they're inspiring about people just going for it, new discoveries, and beating the odds. Some of them died, but this expedition, you said not that many injured. I mean, for that amount of mileage covered over the sea, not knowing what they were going to get into, very few people got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite amazed when I read the facts that only one man died of disease. That's amazing. One man died of poisoning, again, which is amazing because when you go on shore, you're going to eat things, aren't you? You're going to think, oh, that looks nice, I'll have that. But only one man died of poisoning, and only 4 through drowning. It's amazing that all of that time and all of the crew, and actually there was only 6 people who didn't come back after all of that work. 65,000 miles. That's 4.5 years of sailing around the world, and only 6 people didn't make it. That really is something to realise that actually he must have been a very good captain. I think he ran a very tight ship, and obviously his men benefited by the way he worked.
Wow, it's incredible when you think about this. And then he died really at a young age. I mean, and on Nancy's birth anniversary. Your birthday, the 12th of May, everybody. Yes.
Wow.
So so he died very young, but he didn't finish the journal. You were talking about his brother John helped to finish the journal. How did he know what to write in the journal?
Well, George, he'd kept notes and logs of everything. So it was just a matter of writing it all up. Okay. And I think when he died, there weren't that much more to do. So I think his brother just sort of copied his style and just wrote the rest of his notes up. But the book itself, from what I've looked at online, it's a very, very detailed log of what he did, what the voyages and the journeys and everything. Really good detail. And there's some lovely information about the ship and measurements and everything. It's really, really good. If you are really interested in how people did survey in the late 1700s, the book is a fantastic source of information.
And so he's done that, and then he dies. But you said in your article too that there should be museums about him everywhere. There probably are. We just haven't got there yet. But I mean, to me, this is something huge and epic. And you said that he didn't get as much, recognition of this. And then he retired on half pay. So what did they do? Not give him his full, salary?
Well, I think he came back, and they didn't really have anything for him to do, but they wanted to keep him on the books, so to speak. So I think they just sort of let him go and write his book and paid him half pay. But when you consider what he had just done for the country, really, and for the world, really, it was a bit of a kick in the teeth for him. But I mean, you're saying, there probably is a museum. I don't know of a museum to him. I haven't heard of one. There isn't one in Kings Lynn. There's mention of him in Kings Lynn. I don't think there's one in Petersham. I know he's got a grave, but that was only put up a long while after he died. And the memorial in the church was only put up in 1841. So I don't think there probably is a museum to him. Unless there is one in Vancouver.
In Petersham, where is that? How far?
That's where he's buried.
Is it far from you?
Oh yes, that's nowhere near Norfolk.
Okay, so now the scandal.
Yes.
So he dies, and out come the wills, and here comes that always happens. Here comes the drama, right? And so apparently his brother Charles, was it Charles that had a problem?
Yes, I don't know why. This is something, this is what I say. When you are a historical researcher, you start with a little tiny job to do, and you end up that it's going to take you the rest of your life to actually find it out. So this is something else that I now need to look at as to what had John done to upset Charles, because Vancouver had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and when Charles died, his will said in very few words that he didn't really want his brother to do anything or have anything, because, and I will quote it, it says, "My brother, to whom I have nothing to bequeath but my cordial forgiveness and earnest prayers that he may see his errors before that it becomes too late." So what errors he had done, I just cannot imagine.
Because John, sometimes for leaving, because I know that sometimes people get really weird when people leave, and they do this like you've disowned us, or they disown you. I know Nancy had a friend who did that when she went to Kenya from the States, and a friend said, "If you leave, I'm disowning you. Like you're not. I'm not going to ever talk to you again."
And she did.
And we've met other people that have gone through this, and that was the first thing that came to mind was, I wonder if the brother was jealous and like you're leaving the family, and maybe he was supposed to do something in the, I don't know, like a business with him, and he just went off to do something and he got mad that his brother left. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'd like to find out. But John's will in 1828, just shows that he was a very successful man, but it doesn't really give me any clues. So I shall need to keep looking.
Maybe he had an affair with his brother's wife.
Ooh. Here we go, Nancy.
Oh, you're writing a book now, aren't you?
Oh, or maybe Charles wanted to go and be on the Discovery, and George said no. That's it. You're not good enough, or something. Who knows?
Oh dear.
It could be a whole bunch of things, or maybe they did something when they were kids. It could be a childhood thing. Well,
it said that was a long while. It said in Charles's will that it was, a long-standing resentment that he had. So I really do need to find out what it was.
Oh, I want to know. I want to know. I'm going to start reading everything I can on this, because I had no idea. You just hear the word or the name Vancouver, and you think of British Columbia and all the beauty up there because it's so beautiful, and that's what you think of. But we really need to, like, what's in a name? Everywhere you go, it's like, okay, why is this town named after who, what, and where? And it's interesting too, as we travel, we start to see a lot of towns will get named for somebody, hoping that person will move there or bring their industry there. Like Yerington, Nevada, they went through 3 names, and the third one was Yerington, trying to lure the Yerington railway man over to Yerington to bring the railroad, because that would help the town prosper. And so it's interesting, how these names come about, and then to find out this story. And
I think it's interesting to find out, but I think it's a shame when these things get forgotten. How many people who live in Vancouver, in either Canada or America, because there's a Vancouver in America as well, isn't there? How many actually know much about George? I know some people do, but it ought to be taught in the schools, because that's something that they really need to know, why their town has got that name. I think it's an important part of local history that needs to be upheld.
I wonder if these explorer guys got to be the one to name something, like when they're drawing their maps, and so they're on this island. No, I think I'll name it after myself.
I don't know if that was why they were called Vancouver. I know he has named some places, because the name itself, Vancouver, used to be Van Koeverden, because it's a Dutch name. The Van part of it is the Dutch, isn't it? So his dad was Van Koeverden, and actually there are some islands off the coast of Canada called Koeverden Island. So he did name some of these places after his family. his older family, so to speak. Because the Vancouver-den family are some of the biggest family, one of the biggest and oldest families in Holland, actually. His Charles's wife was actually a Vancouver-den from Holland, and her dad was actually Baron Vancouver-den. So, there was a lot of connection still going on between the Kings-Lynn family and the Dutch family. So, once you start to look at these things, like I said, you can go on forever because they're all intertwined.
It's cool, though. I mean, that's the thing when I was asking about Gasper and Jasper, and because the names change, and that's the thing too. It's really like my grandfather's side, Nancy's dad's side, they changed the names, Maxler to Mechler to this and that, and everybody changed it when they came to the States. And it just.
Well, I don't think a lot of the people that a lot of people couldn't write, and the people keeping the records. It's like,
kept
how do you spell your name? I don't know. Yeah,
they kept things short. And whenever I watch any of the family history things, you see like, if it didn't fit in the register, that's it. You just got your name shortened. Boom.
Yes.
That's it.
But also a lot of people's names would have been changed for, and I'm using the small p for political reasons. So a lot of people changed their names because of fashions and because persecution. For instance, this week, actually, I accompanied a party of, they were some children, refugees from Germany, just before the Second World War. So they came over from Germany in 1939. I don't know if you've heard about the Kindertransport, but I actually took a group of these people to Sandringham for the day on Monday, and their stories were fascinating, horrendous, interesting, etc. And obviously a lot of them are now in their late 80s and early 90s. But especially for the Jewish families, a lot of them changed their names because of persecution. And so lots of people change names for lots of different reasons.
Well, I know my grandfather on my dad's side, his spelling of his name, they changed their name because they didn't want to be German right after World War II.
Right.
Yep.
So there's that.
Exactly.
Man, so when you need help, call Glynn, everybody. Go to his website, norfolk-tours.uk, and if you've got English history, one of the cool things is to go over and walk in the same place that your ancestors lived. It's such an interesting connection, and that's what Glynn does for everyone. And also will take you around to see all the things you want to see in England. So if you want to go to Stonehenge, he'll take you there. If you want to go sailing on the Norfolk Broads, he'll take you to do that too, or fish and chips, or a Mr. Whippy ice cream cone, right?
Yes, indeed.
I think that you could also find out that you're related to one of these explorers.
I know, that's
which
so
would
cool.
Be really cool to know.
I'd go berserk if I was like related to George Vancouver. I'd be like a dog going spinnies. I'd be so.
Well, you see, this is the one thing that I don't know whether I am yet. But I mean, he was living in the same town as my ancestors were living at the same time. So it's unlikely because they were different class. My lot were peasants and he was middle class. But who knows? They were all in the same place at the same time.
Oh,
maybe he had a little affair with somebody from your family.
And John really wanted that lady. Yeah, you never. Glynn, okay, so I'm calling this part one of the George Vancouver series. Glynn, so you got to keep us posted. Any information you find, we've got to keep up on this story because I'll do some thinking this side too. I know that a lot of travel writers just came back from Whidbey, and I know Linda Kassam will be on a show shortly, and so I'll grill them. And actually, Hilary Larson that wrote about Whidbey Island is from Vancouver, I believe, in British Columbia. So now I'm going to have to knock. Yeah, I'm gonna call her and say, hey, is there a museum? So let's find out. Maybe we can get a museum on a show with you. It'll be really cool. We can do a
exactly. I mean, I have found Whidbey's will, so if they're interested in that, I can get them a copy.
Very, very
That's so
interesting.
cool.
Thank you so much, Glynn. It's always so much fun chatting with you, and just you remind us that we're all connected around the world, and that's really
We are indeed.
thing. And again, everyone, norfolk-tours.co.uk is the way to go and connect with Glynn. He's also on Facebook and Twitter. And also, his article, again, is up on nationalparktraveling.com. Just type in Glynn, and you'll find his other articles on that website as well. And it'll be in the June-July issue of Parks and Travel magazine, which you'll also find on nationalparktraveling.com. Glynn, we love to play music, right?
Yes, indeed.
Well, your song today is called Seafaring, because I thought we had to have, ocean expedition music.
And of course.
It is cool. It's from our friends, the Madisons. It's off of their album Greener. They're based out in the Smoky Mountains. And once we get out there in the Tennessee area, Glynn, I'm sure we're going to find some more English names out there to start calling you on. But everyone, you can go to madisonsmusic.com to keep up with them. They're an amazing group. And don't forget, Big Blend Radio airs Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific time and 7 p.m. Eastern time. Fridays and Sundays, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. The schedule is up on bigblendradio.com. You can listen live or anytime after the episodes air, and all of that is on the website. Thanks so much, Glynn.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and I'll keep looking about this George Vancouver stuff, because you never know what you're going to find.
You never know.
Awesome.
Find my way from being lost out on the sea, tossed so carelessly what it's done to me. Tried to